I commend to you this clemency video. Regina has it streaming on the website, and it's a really nice piece, and it intersects a lot with what these panelists have talked about. In 2001, Jack Dale Walker was executed in Oklahoma for killing his girlfriend and the girlfriend's uncle. Scott Braden was the attorney who headed the defense team, and they produced this clemency video, and as Scott said, he answered some questions for Regina over email, and he said, our purpose was to tell the Oklahoma Pardon and Parole Board something about Jack before the hearing, so that at the actual hearing they would have a background to help understand the mental illness evidence we were going to present. We felt video would be a unique way of doing this, since a written narrative, no matter how compelling, would not be as powerful as video. And I was thinking about that while your students were up there. I mean, it's just so powerful to see them speaking for themselves. He said that it took them 3 weeks to shoot all of the interviews that they put together. They spent about 2 18-hour periods editing it, and they had a professional editor help them who charged $750. He said that was way below cost because the editor had spent so many hours with them and did it seems, kind of as a pro bono project. So he said he thought it cost them less than $1,500 to make the video, even though it really is very professional if you see it. But a lot of the time was the time that the attorneys spent both doing the interviews and then making the decisions about what was to go in the video. And then the only other thing I wanted to read to you, because I thought that this was really interesting and dovetails with something I think that Emily was saying. Professor Austin asked him, well, what do you think the impact of the video was? And he said, well, I'm not sure I can say what impact the video had on support for Jack. Obviously, he was executed. I guess the shortest answer is none, since Jack was eventually executed. In our primary audience, the 5 members of Oklahoma's Pardon and Parole Board voted to deny clemency. He said, in Oklahoma, the governor may not act or even consider a request for executive clemency unless you have a favorable recommendation from the Pardon Board. But I think it paid dividends in other ways. Jack's family was very shattered, partly because of his mother, Tanya's drug abuse and her estrangement from her mother and sister. Also, Jack's mental health problems placed a huge wedge between his family. Jack's aunt was always faithful and supportive, but her husband and sons, though concerned, were less supportive. I think the years of drug abuse and Jack's violent behavior had taken its toll on them. But when we came in and asked them all to be interviewed, they all stepped up, and I think it made them confront what was about to happen and to face that all the years of turmoil were really the symptoms of mental illness that had gone untreated. And he goes on, and he says that this was in some ways cathartic for the family and helpful for them, in addition to helpful for the ultimate intended audience. And I think that this is something I end up talking to my students a lot about, is some of the power of storytelling for the people who get to tell their stories, as Todd was saying. So we don't have too much time, and I wanted us to be able to get to questions, and I'm going to exercise my prerogative to start that off, because, as Scott Braden says in this, a lot of the time, a lot of the cost was sweat equity, and you all 3 mentioned that. You're obviously not making a living doing this, and I wonder how you're supporting the work that you do, because it is obviously so expensive to do it, if you think about having to make a living at it. And then if anyone else has questions, please come to the mic over here.
Well, it's a little different for us right now because we've moved into producing this feature documentary about our father, which is taking most of our time. Prior to this project, however, we tried to make it possible for us to support one of us doing the work, and we thought that we measured kind of success in that area, that if Emily could produce these videos full time and I could and I could keep my legal practice manageable, so I could also make a contribution to the work that that in a way that was kind of that would be subsidizing the projects we're making. You know, it's difficult. I don't know that I have an answer to how to make it sustainable, because I don't think that it's something we've figured out yet. In terms of how much to charge people we work with, that's kind of a struggle with us. We struggle with trying to figure out how, we're not a nonprofit, we're not a 501c3, and we don't have a grant base that's permitting us to do this work for low cost. We do it for low cost, you know, for as low cost as we can out of you know, our own desire to do social justice work, which is not a very sustainable model. I think that if we that as lawyers and filmmakers begin to recognize a need for this kind of work, that there's kind of a need for coming together in figuring out a sustainable model for us all to do it.
And just to add to that, how Sarah and I are able, one of the reasons that we're able to continue to do this work is that we do have donated office space. So our production company and Sarah's legal practice can exist in the same place. So we're always sort of there supporting one another in our work. And without that, it would be a lot more difficult. So we sort of have a hybrid office. The voicemail is a little schizophrenic.
I would just add, I mean, our project is a community project, and it could only work and it can only be sustainable, at least in the level of sweat equity, in that the community is engaged and this matters to them. For me individually, and for some of the people who came together and first started this, I mean, we have developed a grant base, and I think nowadays there is a lot more opportunity around that. It's as media becomes more in everyone's mind in this era, there's more spaces and ways to get money. But I think there's also ways, and we haven't done this, but we certainly thought about it, to tier structure where there's groups we're going to work with for free, but then there's other groups that we could do jobs that would actually pay a little bit and that would subsidize the other work. We haven't done that yet. So.
I mean, that's something that we've definitely done in terms of, you know, every group we work with is different. When we worked with the 3 corporate law firms on the Norfolk 4 video, you know, we saw that as an opportunity to charge higher rates in order to subsidize some of the work we do for organizations that have less money. And it was something we were completely upfront about with the legal teams we work with. It wasn't, you know, we weren't, you know, pretending that this was a standard rate we were working with them for, but I think that it was a kind of coming together where they understood, they valued our work and wanted to use our services, but wanted to support the work we were doing for other clients as well. And
even at our highest, you know, our budgets are always well below, you know, market rate budgets. You know, I remember one meeting with the pro bono department of a corporate law firm where one of the lawyers actually started laughing because the budget was less than her wedding video. That taught us a lesson.
I had a question for Todd. Towards the end of your talk, you talked a little bit about the barriers to getting access to the technology, and how obviously one of your main objectives is to facilitate communication from one group to another. So for example, having the Taxi Cab Alliance understand what's going on with the hotel workers union and vice versa. And theoretically speaking, it seems like the internet would be a great way to facilitate that communication, particularly if we're not even talking about Philadelphia, but just nationally and even globally. However, as you know, and as you alluded to at the end, the barriers to just buying a computer, paying $40 a month for broadband. I mean, what you really need to look at videos and things like that is broadband internet. There are some communities in Philadelphia that are underserved by broadband. There are some communities in like rural America where they don't even have broadband internet access. And I guess I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about, you mentioned that you've been in dialogue with Philadelphia about their municipal wireless project. A couple weeks ago, there was an article on slate.com that was about how a lot of municipal wireless projects have failed. And coincidentally, the next day in the Daily Pennsylvanian, there was an article about how Philadelphia is still moving forward with their municipal wireless project. And so I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
I can. A lot of the municipal wireless projects have failed, and Earthlink has been the provider in a lot of cases, and is the provider for Philadelphia, and recently cut 900 people out of their workforce, out of a workforce of 1,800. So half their workforce and their whole municipal wireless division. And the only city they stayed in was Philadelphia because it was their first city. It's a problem, and Mayor Street moved forward with a very ambitious program of wiring the city and having it be the first major Wi-Fi city. And I think that Earthlink will finish here, and I think we all in the city have a stake at making sure they do, and holding the city, Wireless Philadelphia, which is a nonprofit the city set up to manage the network, and Earthlink, the provider, accountable.
Yeah, I mean, do you think that the wireless, given the fact that it's a private-public partnership and that Philadelphia isn't necessarily, this isn't going to be like another public utility, it's going to be a relationship between Earthlink and Philadelphia, will wireless be cheap or free? What do you think?
No, it's not going to be. In fact, I mean, they have failed us in so many ways already. The whole point of the wireless network was to be, and this is just a tiny bit of history, for it to be a network that was owned by the city, not by a private company. But in the negotiations between the city and Earthlink, the city gave up that right from the beginning. Other cities like Boston, who are still negotiating this, Boston will own their network, the citizens and the city together. But Philadelphia will not because of the negotiation that our administration did with Earthlink. And the promise right now is that for low-income communities, they'll pay $9.95 a month, plus a $150 router, and a $30 setup fee, which comes out to $300 at least in the first year. In the same breath, Earthlink is offering any new subscriber, and you have to be means tested in order to get this. In the same breath, Earthlink is offering any new member $6.95 a month for the first 6 months. So there's a lot of problems right off the bat with how it's being structured and what the city is trying to do and what Earthlink is doing to drum up support. I mean, they need to sell subscriptions or else it's going to fall apart. So I don't think it's going to be free, certainly not for poor folks who it's supposed to be free for, but I do think we're actually organizing around this in the next year. We're going to try to hold the city accountable on this and try to find out what communities want in terms of the wireless. Do they want it free? Do they want a better connection? Do they want a free computer, which is something that we're trying to work out? Because no one really knows at this point. I don't have high aspirations unless the city wakes up and holds Earthlink and Wireless Philadelphia accountable. And Mayor Nutter, most likely Mayor Nutter, excuse me, who probably could be pushed on this issue before coming into office.
Hi, it's a question for Emily and Sarah. Could you talk a little about your use of music in your films? Why you use music and how you use music?
Well, it's changed a little over the years. We think that music is really helpful in helping us, convey emotion and also helping giving some structure to the film, give it some sort of, help bring out the theme and and the choices that we make in the music help really draw attention to particular aspects of the story that we're trying to highlight. And hopefully gain the sympathy of an audience. Although we try not to overuse music because we don't want to appear manipulative. I mean, it's a fine line in our work, and we make a lot of choices. I mean, we're obviously, we're working for the defendants, but we don't want to come across as seeming manipulative, so we try to be very careful about that. And one of the ways in which we're careful about that is in our use of music, and we try not to have it running throughout the whole thing, and we try not to be really heavy-handed with it. But on the other hand, we do try to, really drive home the emotional high points of the film with the use of music. All of our music is composed for us. Luckily, Sarah's husband is a music producer, so he helps us out a lot with that.
And Sarah, as a lawyer?
I mean, I think the music is at its most effective when you don't notice it. I think that when you're watching these films and you're like, oh, thinking about the music, then the music has probably failed. It's supposed to, it's supposed to add to it, but it's not supposed to overwhelm the film. I mean, as a lawyer, I think that we have, in making these types of videos, we have more freedom. It's, we can use music, we can use dissolves, we can use conventional tricks of filmmaking, because these are not videos that are ever going to see the inside of the courtroom. And I don't, I think that these are tools that we should use. These are tools that are used all the time to sell us products on television. I think that these are tools that we should take in our hand to do good in a social justice context.
Hi, how are you? On a light note, it's getting toward the end of the afternoon. My name is Jorge Godoy. I'm a criminal lawyer, have been for a long time, and it occurs to me as I'm basking in this wonderful presentation here, I heard an older gentleman here say to a younger member of the audience, was the father of these two girls the guy with the long hair? And the younger member said, I really don't know. And it occurs to me that there's a big generational divide, and a good percentage of the audience may not know who your father was, that he was one of the prominent defenders of unpopular causes for at least my whole career, and he was one of those men or lawyers that kept that torch burning in civil rights and in defending the most unpopular of causes. And as a father of a young lawyer myself, to see the new generation take up a torch like his is just incredibly affirming. I just want to say that to you because time does move on. And under the guise of a technical question, I wonder if you all saw obviously the famous movie, The Shawshank Redemption, where Morgan Freeman appears before the parole board. And I wonder if you've seen that, in one of the finest pieces of writing about an inmate who has been denied parole over and over again. And he comes before the hard-boiled Southern parole board, and he says something to the effect of, I'm now 55, 60 years old, and that 17-year-old kid that committed that crime 30 years ago, I don't know him. He's not me. I've now evolved into a totally different person, and I know, of course, you're going to deny me anyway, right? And of course they don't. And I wondered if you saw that, and just a comment maybe, and thank you. And congratulations for all you do.
Thank you. That was a very nice thing to say. I've seen that. I haven't seen it recently, but I have a kind of that I can call from it directly and have a contemporary opinion on it. Do you, Emily?
I haven't seen it, but I think that what you're describing was expressed as actually a really common part of the story in clemency videos that we make for people on death row. It's that a lot of people everybody that we've made a clemency video before doesn't really have that always comes across about. That seems very real to me. The writing really reflects the reality, but sadly, it isn't very compelling to parole boards.
One of the things that you're question needs to be thinking about though is I'm a relatively new lawyer. I've been out of law school for 3 years, and my first case as a lawyer on my own out in the world was a parole case of somebody who committed a violent crime, and it just strikes me that there's a lot of things that lawyers do that are kind of non-legal, and that in helping somebody prepare to appear before the parole board, a lot of the tools that you're accessing are the same kind of tools that we're discussing here today. It's like, how to help somebody tell their story in their own words, how to help somebody look at their own experience the way somebody from the outside will be looking at it when they judge this person. And that can be a hard step to take as a person facing the situation. But what you're asking them to do that, you're asking them to sit across the table from themselves and see themselves the way the parole board would see them. And I'm sure that is a lot of what Todd's experience is like in working with communities to make videos.
Well, I want to thank our panelists. That was really just a fabulous session, and thank you all.
Also, I think that maybe a pamphlet was distributed. There's a couple, tips from mistakes we've made along the way that if you're interested in making advocacy videos for your clients, hopefully you can learn from our mistakes. It's very rough. It's something, that there's probably a lot of typos, and we made it for a different purpose and then tried to reframe it for this purpose, but we still wanted to distribute it because I think there are some very useful tips. And also, if any of you are planning to go out and attempt this on your own, and we encourage you to, we are available, to answer questions and help along the way. So our information is on the bottom of that sheet. We also, if you didn't get one of those, we have business cards. But we really would like to be a resource to all of you.
What city are you in?
We're in New York. Our office is out of Brooklyn. But none of our work is in New York. Very little of our work is in New York. We travel for most of our work.
Thank you.
We're going to take a 10-minute break and come back for the roundtable.